Hello everyone. Hope you guys are having a great week. For this week, we are going to talk about how to manage academic reading. And for the next session, next week, we are going to talk about academic note taking. So yeah, let's get started. I know that most of you guys are still taking introductory courses, but I believe in the near future, you will be taking more advanced courses and then you will be asked to read academic journals and book chapters. The objective of today's session is to provide you with some information and techniques about how to read books and journal articles more effectively. If I categorize it briefly, there are probably two different types of academic reading for a student. So the first type is general reading, which means that you read widely without a specific purpose. Probably is to gain some inspiration for your research. And the second type is specific reading. It means that you are assigned a reading list from your professor, or you are aiming to find relevant information for your own research or dissertation. It is probably the case that students mostly do the first type of reading over the weekends or during their vacations, and the second type of reading for specific courses and assignments. For the purpose of the session today, I will basically focus on the second type of specific reading. As you might know, social sciences like economics, political science, philosophy, cultural studies, anthropology, law, and so on, they are really deeply and closely connected to each other. So you might benefit from reading widely through general reading. But compared to reading across different fields or reading in literature, poetry, and drama, specific reading has a more clearer purpose. You might have to read in a limited time frame for a specific assignment, an essay, a paper, or even your dissertation. So when you read under pressure and under time constraint, you probably have to find specific strategies to speed up your information gathering process. So I will separately discuss two different scenarios when you have to do some reading. So the first scenario is when you are given a reading list from your professor or instructor. Some professors might indicate that there are some required reading in the reading list, but some professors might not. If you don't have enough time to go through every single reading in the list, then probably it is a good idea to narrow down to some readings that you find most important and most interested in. So please go through the basic information of the book or the journal article that you are going to read. Look at the author's name, the title, the date of publication, and the publisher or the journal name. If it's an academic journal, then it's likely that you can find an abstract along with the keywords, so you can see what kind of topics and discussions are covered in this paper. And if it is a book, then you might need to look at the editor's introduction or the author's introduction, so you know the basic structure or the logical framework of the whole book. Some books are quite long, so you should go through the name of each chapter or section. And remember that the authors normally place each chapter in an order that is logically connected. So you can follow that logic and see whether the book is appropriate for your information gathering. I know that you guys are taking some introductory courses like Introduction to Microeconomics or Macroeconomics. So in that case, you might find the index section really important. Sometimes after you read a book, you might forget specific definitions or technical terms. So in that case, you can look up in the index section. And in the index section, it normally lists all the specific terms and the page numbers where the terms appeared. So if a term is really frequently appeared in the book, then you can look it up on various different pages. When you are reading an empirical paper, it is very likely that you will encounter some tables and graphs, namely regression tables and scatter plots. In many cases, those different illustrations, they contain really important conclusions and summaries of the research, because they might indicate the direction and the magnitude of the correlations. For example, in the regression tables, you will find the correlation coefficient as well as the stars or asterisks behind the correlation coefficients. So you know how the different variables are related and how strong the statistical significances are for the correlations. Compared to really long books, it is probably easier for us to follow an academic article on a journal, because we can easily find the abstract, the keywords, the research question, the data, and the methodology and conclusion parts. So on each section, you will be able to see how the author reasoned to touch upon the topic. As a social science reader, you probably have to ask yourself, what is the research topic? What is the research question? And what is the theory? And how the author used evidence or examples and counterexamples to back up the argument. So these are kind of questions you can ask yourself while you are doing the reading. Another thing you might need to consider when you read is the contribution of this piece of work by this author. So normally the author will indicate what kind of contribution this work has made to the literature. But also you have to ask yourself whether this contribution is a big contribution, is it innovative, is it revolutionary, or is it a complementary contribution? The skills of finding keywords might be really important if you are a political science or political philosophy major, because you might need to read a lot of works by some philosophers in the past. And there are probably not many graphs or tables to follow, so maybe you need to read through some really normative and descriptive statements. It would be really difficult if the reading itself is written in a style that is not the same as modern English, or there are slightly different ways of expression. So in that case, you might need dictionaries in order to understand as a second language speaker in English. For classical works, as an undergraduate student, if you are not doing a specific text analysis research, you don't really need to read word by word. You can use the technique of skimming and scanning so that you can grasp the big idea of the author. The second scenario is that the professor does not assign a specific reading list. So in this case, in order to develop your thesis or your theory or your empirical structure for your paper, you probably need to do a large amount of literature review by yourself. So in that case, you will need to find resources online, especially during this COVID-19 situation. You normally would not go to libraries in person. So you might need to try those websites, including Google Scholar, SSRN, Science Direct, or Online Library Willy. So go there and search by keywords and look at the citation rates and look at the authors and abstract information so that you know exactly what type of research it is. And if you're looking for books to understand specific topics, and then I recommend you to look at the publisher of the book. So I listed some of the really renowned publishers, including Routledge, Cengage, Pearson, Cambridge University Press, Oxford University Press, or Harvard University Press. So those kind of publishers, they indicate the quality of the book. You know, there is extreme amount of misinformation online, and there are also phishing journals and book publishers. So in that case, you might need to verify by looking at the publisher, whether it is actually an academic and scientific source of information. Again, please be really careful about the type of information that is available online. When you are not sure, please cross-check with the information on the online library system of the university so you know it is a verified journal article or book. So practice is important. Please start by looking for information through the Waseda Wine search and through some scientific databases listed here. In that case, you will be able to find references for your own essays or papers in the future. Up until now, I discussed about how to find relevant information online. And now I will turn to the question about how many sources should we read? When you are doing a literature review, it is not a good idea, in general, to rely on only one or two works or researchers. Especially when it is a really new topic, it is better to hear from different opinions and perspectives from different researchers. For those who will be taking courses on history of economic thought or history of political philosophy, you will understand that the development of social science is actually based on discussions and debates among different philosophers across time. You will find philosophers discussing topics in social science such as liberty, freedom, responsibility, rights, and democracy from different perspectives and using different theories. And the diversity of thoughts and arguments is exactly one of the most charming points about studying social science. So conclude, for literature review, it is not a good idea to rely on only one or two sources, but you shouldn't read so many different sources at the same time as well. There will be the problem of information overload, and you should try to understand that it is better for yourself to give enough time to think about, interpret, and understand the ideas of each researcher or philosopher. So similar to academic writing, for academic reading, planning is also the key. So please plan beforehand about what you are gonna read this week. Next, I will be discussing about the differences between passive reading and active reading. So for passive reading, you don't really enjoy reading. You read word by word and you just blindly follow what is on the reading. And for active reading, you actually reflect on your daily life. You reflect on what you already know about the topic, and you actually question and critique on what the author has written on the reading. So for passive reading, you are just forced to read by the course requirement. But for active reading, you are actually searching for relevant information for your own interest or for your own research. So in the case of active reading, you are enjoying. So my advice is that please read not only for your exams and completing assignments. Please read while thinking that what you read is actually expanding your knowledge base and might be really beneficial for your career in the future, whether you want to pursue a career in industry or you want to continue with academics. So by reading, you also need to question what is written by the author. So are there any counterexamples? Is the reading out of date? Is the reading having any limitations or flaws in the model building? Those types of questions are really beneficial for you to read and critique. If everyone is reading blindly and passively, there is probably no value for discussion. If you can reflect on what you've read and form your own opinion toward the arguments and the theories in the reading, then you can share it with your peers and colleagues, and then you guys can communicate and exchange ideas. So if you don't have a designated reading list, then you have to find reliable information online by using the academic databases. And then when you read, please keep in mind about your purpose for reading, and then find the most important relevant information that you are looking for. rather than just passively following everything that is written on the reading. And other than that, please make sure that you take notes when you are reading. You can take notes of several inspirations that you've got from the book or some critiques that you want to raise. For example, you might want to compare the work across different continents or regions, or you want to compare it across different timelines or time series. So in that case, you might want to write down everything that you've thought about in a notebook or in your laptop. For those who are writing a literature review, or you want to get yourself familiarized with the current literature, a good way of doing it is through skimming and scanning of the current works or the historical works in the literature to understand what has already been done in the literature so that you can explain why your research can be of some importance and what type of significance you are adding to the literature. Again, whether it's a journal article or a book, look for the chapters or the sections name and the tables, diagrams, and important illustrations and numbers. Philosophy papers and empirical papers might require different efforts or skills when you read, but you have to familiarize yourself with different types of academic reading in the following 4 years. So I will not be specifically talking about specific type of academic reading for different subfields. When you skim and scan, please look for main points, subpoints, reasons, evidence, examples, or counterexamples, and also please look for signposts, such as most importantly, to summarize, in conclusion, but, however, in contrast, on the other hand, moreover, besides, furthermore. These are called logical connectors. In order to make your literature review more effective and to avoid plagiarism, like we discussed in the previous week, you should note down the page number, the chapter number, and the book name and the author name when you read. It is always better to distinguish between what the author has said and what you have thought about. So don't get confused in your citation and paraphrase. So in conclusion, please engage in active reading rather than passive reading and try to find the key points or key arguments made by the author. And please formulate your own impressions, your own opinions and ideas about what you are reading, and try to find answers through reading in your daily life.